It is a Thursday night. It is episode number 32 of Championship Rings. Brandon Lewis from Brand's World, Josh Ungar from the Ungar to the Max YouTube channel. Tonight, we are breaking down the NFL draft, and we are going into all things NBA playoffs. Josh, we got a great show tonight.
We sure do, and yep, the NFL draft happened, and, well, I don't know about you, but it had all these high expectations coming into it. There's going to be a ton of movement in the top 10. It was a complete dud for me.
Well, I saw some speculation on that. I'm going to say it wasn't a complete dud. We had some movement, and we had obviously something shocking happen in the top 10. But the draft is always a draft. People always get so hyped for it, and then by an hour in, you realize it's the same thing. It's talking heads breaking down the picks. And I think what affected people like yourself, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I also think the fact that your hometown and your favorite team not having a first-round pick lessens the excitement by a long mile.
Actually, in this case, no, that has nothing to do with it because the Browns haven't had a first-round pick for the past couple years because of the Deshaun Watson trade, which, contrary to what I've heard other fans say, the Houston Texans won the Deshaun Watson trade in a landslide, but the Browns not having a first-round pick had nothing to do with it for me.
So of course, we are here on Twitter at Rings Champion. We are on Instagram at Rings Champion. We're on Facebook at Rings Champion 216. Our YouTube channel is Rings Champions 216. Josh, you talked about the Browns not having a first-round pick because they traded away 3 firsts for a quarterback. We had 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12, as I had predicted last week here on Championship Rings in my personal mock draft. And no matter if the order was correct or not, I did nail 5 of the 6 landing spots for those 6 quarterbacks. I had obviously we all predicted Caleb Williams going to Chicago. The consensus was Jaden Daniels was going to Washington. I did have Drake May in my personal mock draft going number 3 to the New England Patriots. I also did have JJ McCarthy going to the Vikings, so I thought the Vikings would have to trade up more than they did to get him. And I had Bo Nix, actually, at number 12. Some people were shocked at that pick. I was not. Denver needed a quarterback. I think Bo Nix is Sean Payton's guy. The shocking one is obviously the one that we'll get into, that being Michael Penix, who the Atlanta Falcons took at number 8. They did not have to trade up. They did not have to trade down. They stayed pat, and instead of taking a defensive player, I know you had thought maybe the Colts could move in that spot and grab a wide receiver, which they did not. They waited till round number 2. But at the end of the day, Michael Penix is the new quarterback, potentially of the Atlanta Falcons, whether it be this year, next year, 3 years from now.
Yeah, they are basing this fully off of the way it worked out with Jordan Love in Green Bay. Guess what? Jordan Love was 20 years old when the Packers drafted him. I think Michael Penix is like 20.
He's 25 right now.
Yeah, completely different. And why did you pay Kirk Cousins the huge contract if you were just going to turn around and draft his eventual replacement in the first round? It's stupid. You had a glaring hole on defense. You had all the defensive players to choose from, and you go quarterback?
So this is, listen, I think we were all shocked at what happened Thursday night, myself included. We all couldn't believe it in the moment. But I actually think when you sit down and you think about what the Atlanta Falcons did and you really analyze it, it was actually the right decision to draft Michael Penix.
No, it wasn't.
And let me explain why. Kirk Cousins signed a 4-year deal. You know how much that contract really is? It's a 2-year contract. If you actually look at the terms of the contract, it is a front-loaded contract for Kirk Cousins, where he's essentially going to play 1 to 2 very good years, and then Atlanta's going to move off of him. And Atlanta realizes that right now they are in a prime position. Tampa, Baker Mayfield's a good quarterback, but he's often not consistent year to year. Carolina, I like what they did in the draft. I actually think Bryce Young could turn it around, but he could still be a massive bust, and Carolina could be in the doldrums for years. I don't like the direction the New Orleans Saints are in right now. I think Atlanta's in a perfect position. Michael Penix, who also has an injury history, by the way, we know he tore his ACL twice in college, but we also know Kirk Cousins is coming off a torn Achilles. We don't know how healthy Kirk Cousins is going to be. Right now, we don't even know if Kirk Cousins is going to be healthy enough to start week one. And so, with that in mind, it is on the board currently today as we sit May 2nd, 2024. Michael Penix is your week one starter for the Atlanta Falcons. And you can make an argument the situation he's in, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, that they added Rondell Moore. They have a very good top 10 offensive line in the week. That Atlanta, while they needed a pass rusher, and yes, they tried to trade back up reportedly in the first round, they did get some defensive players later on in the draft. That we know what is the most important position in the NFL, quarterback. If you have one, you win a lot of games, no matter how bad your defense is. If you don't have one, you're not going to win a lot of games. And so Atlanta took a calculated risk, and I believe it has the chance to really pay off because after Kirk Cousins, when you don't have a succession plan, now you do.
Raheem, they just hired Raheem Morris. I think he's already on the clock with this pick. Um, Even if Michael Penix doesn't play right away, when he does, it better we better see results because
Now that I agree with, but I think, and we're going to get into this a little bit later. I just mentioned it. I think Michael Penix is in a very good situation, and I think it was the worst kept secret in the week that teams like Vegas, teams like Seattle, teams like the Giants were trying to trade up to get this guy because I think teams wanted it to be a smokescreen that they did not view him as a first round talent. When some teams may have viewed him even more talented wise than Drake May.
yeah, I, the Raiders were probably shocked at number 13 when all six quarterbacks were off the board. Um, so I don't know who's going to throw the ball to Brock Bowers.
Well, it is going to be Gardner Minshew. And let me say this about Vegas. I like their entire roster except quarterback. I mean, you look at that roster. Their secondary obviously needs work, but weapons wise, you got Devontae Adams, you got Jacoby Myers, you got Michael Mayer, you got Brock Bowers, you have Christian Wilkins, who just came over from Miami, Max Crosby, Tyree Wilson, their first round pick from a year ago. They have a left tackle in Colton Miller. I mean, so left tackle, pass rush, weapons, boxes, check, check, check. Gardner Minshew is not a terrible NFL quarterback. Look what he did last year with the Indianapolis Colts. We thought the Colts were dead and out of the doldrums, and he took them to the last game of the regular season.
Yes, but think about the division the Raiders
That was my next point. Now in this division, now you got to deal with Andy Reid. You got to deal with Jim Harbaugh. You got to deal with Sean Payton. Who, by the way, I think Bo Nix will start week one for Denver. I think he has a chance to be successful here in his rookie season. So if I'm Vegas, I'm taking a look at it, and I think that Vegas is going to compete. They're probably a fourth place team, but where they were at in the draft, they knew going in the only way to get a quarterback was for them to trade up. And so when they weren't able to do that, because obviously Denver was targeting on Bo Nix, and I don't think Vegas really wanted Bo Nix. I think the guy they wanted was Penix. Why not take the best tight end on the board in Brock Bowers? I know you already have Michael Mayer. It's where I thought the first defensive player on the board will go. But you cannot deny, man, I think maybe the best tight end ever come out of college, maybe besides George Kittle and Gronk, is Brock Bowers. And I think he's going to be a hell of a weapon for whoever eventually Vegas gets as their starting quarterback.
Yes, but you only mentioned half of the equation. Yes, you have to deal with Andy Reid. Yes, you have to deal with Jim Harbaugh. And yes, Sean Payton. But you are also competing with, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes.
Who, by the way, just got another speedster thanks to the Buffalo Bills. I guarantee you that pick is going to hit.
Yes, Justin Herbert, who I think Jim Harbaugh is going to make into an awesome
And
quarterback.
I think the Chargers, well, I'll say this. I think the Chargers' identity is going to change this year. They brought in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, both from Baltimore. The offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, was Jim Harbaugh's OC in San Francisco. He was also obviously the OC in Baltimore there. They took Joe Alt, who we all pretty much pegged to go to Tennessee at left tackle. He's going to move over to right tackle. And I think Jim Harbaugh's thinking is, listen, I'm in a division with Kansas City and a high flying offense and a very good defense. I may not be able to stop them a ton, but what I can do is run the football. And with my very good quarterback that does not turn the football over, we are going to bully and beat up in physical Kansas City and control the clock and keep the game low scoring. I actually see Herbert putting up very, if you will, pedestrian, maybe managing the game quarterback numbers this year. And I think the Chargers are going to turn into a pound the rock football team, even with Herbert at the quarterback position.
Okay. And then you look at Denver. I think the reason they picked Bo Nix is because Sean Payton sees his next Drew Brees.
Yes, he has a lot of those qualities. He had 60 starts in college, five offensive coordinators in 5 years. So he's a very smart guy. He can understand plays, and he does what Russell Wilson doesn't do, which is, uh, run the play on time as it's designed, doesn't roll out of the pocket. Denver's got weapons. They don't have the best weapons in the world, but Cortland Sutton is still there. Javonte Williams is still there. Their offensive line was rebuilt last year. They got to get some help on the front end. Obviously, they still got Simmons and Surtain on the back end. But I think this Denver team, what people forget, they won, 8 games or so last year with good numbers from Russ, but very managing the game like numbers. Bo Nix can do that and more. Denver's probably an 8 or 9 win team next year.
But that's my point, though, is you look at the quarterback head coach combinations the Raiders have to deal with. I like Pierce as their head coach, don't get me wrong, but the Raiders don't have a quarterback. The reason Gardner Minshew played so well is because he was the backup quarterback last year. Now he's going to
This
be
is true.
he's going to be the starter. That's different responsibilities. I get it. Gardner Minshew became the starter in Indianapolis, and he ended up starting most of the games, but he was still the backup quarterback.
And you never know what you're going to get from Gardner Minshew week in, week out. What was your thoughts before we move on to a couple drafts that we liked, a couple drafts that we didn't like? What are your thoughts on, we saw the Colts. You thought they were going to take a receiver, and I tried arguing with you. I said, I don't think they're taking a receiver in round one. Reports were the receiver they actually wanted was not a receiver. They tried to trade up and get Bowers, but they could not obviously make that trade happen. But they're the one that at pick 14 take the
15.
first, or 15, yes, take the first defensive player off the board.
This pick surprised me a little bit because, I mean, you look at what they have offensively. Yes, they have Jonathan Taylor, Alec Pierce, and Michael Pittman, but that's not enough offensively when you got the likes of um, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, uh, Dalton Schultz, and everything Houston has. And then you look at what Jacksonville has, Travis Etienne. They still have Christian Kirk. They drafted Brian Thomas. So I was thinking the Colts needed another skill position player like a Roma Dunze to try and keep up
They
with.
did. They did go out though in the second, third, fourth round. They drafted receivers. Tank Dell was a third-round pick last year, so Puka Nakua was a fifth-round pick. You can find receivers in other parts of the draft. This was just a very, in my opinion, it was three top receivers and then a huge drop-off, which is why I defended Indianapolis going after. I thought Dallas Turner personally was the best pick. That's why I like what Minnesota did. But you can't deny that Owufu from UCLA is probably going to be a very good player for them.
Yeah, Leatu Foitanu, I think is how you say it.
So let's get into some of the drafts that we did and did not like. For me, and again, I may be biased here, but I think Howie Roseman, once again, of the Philadelphia Eagles, had a great draft. I did not expect. I really like the pick of Quinyon Mitchell at number 22. I didn't expect him to be there. That was the guy that I thought Indy would take at 15. So the fact that he was there to me was a no-brainer, and I absolutely did not think Cooper DeJean was going to make it in the second round, let alone to pick 40. Shout out to all our white cornerbacks out there that are alive, who are now both in the National Football League. But for the Philadelphia Eagles, to be able to go from maybe the worst secondary in the history of the National Football League last year, where they were just getting tortured upon. New defensive coordinator Vic Fangio comes in. You get two automatic game-changing man-to-man corners to go with Darius Slay, to go with the return of C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the secondary, to go with a guy like Reed Blankenship, a guy like Kiwi Ringo, who they drafted last year out of Georgia. All of a sudden, I think this Eagles defense, and I also think another underrated pick was Jeremy Trotter Jr., the son of the former Pro Bowl linebacker for Philly, who I think will absolutely work in that organization. I think all of a sudden, this Eagles team, you look at the additions they made, as I told you earlier this offseason, I'm not going to say Super Bowl, but I think there's a real chance my team rebounds and has a very good year next year.
So my biggest winner, I'm just going to go a couple hours. I think it's east of Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. I thought the Steelers hit a home run with this draft. They shored up their offensive line, and then they go out and get a guy that when Michigan needed a touchdown, if they weren't running it to Blake Corum, they were throwing it to Roman Wilson most of the time. And I think Pittsburgh had a solid draft. I really like what the Steelers did.
I think all of the AFC North had a great draft.
Yes. Let me give you one more winner. The LA Rams. First of all, welcome back to the first round, LA Rams. It was their first round pick since, I think it was 2016 when they drafted
Jared Goff.
Yes. And they go out and you have to replace the legendary Aaron Donald somehow. I know you don't think Aaron Donald is a legend, which is absolutely bonkers.
I didn't say he was a legend. I just said he was a little bit overrated than the best defensive player of all time.
And I still say that's bonkers. But whatever. They just go out and casually get Jared Verse, and then in the second round, they go grab his teammate to try and shore up that defensive line. Yeah, as much as I hate the Rams because Stan Kroenke screwed over the city of St. Louis, I got to give them credit on this one because they nailed the draft too.
Not to mention the running back, Blake Corum, who I thought for sure, and I was nervous because I thought for sure if he did not go there, I don't know if you noticed, but in the second round, the Eagles traded up and they had one pick ahead of the Cowboys. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Philly took the Clemson running back in the fourth round because I actually think Howie Rosen wanted to take Blake Corum and won't tell anybody to get him away from Dallas because that's who I had Dallas taking in the second round, and it would have scared me to death. Speaking of a draft that I did not love, and again, no bias here, but I did not understand the Dallas Cowboys draft at all. They drafted linemen. They drafted a wide receiver late, and they did not draft a running back at all. Instead, it's Jerry Jones bringing back what I call his son, Ezekiel Elliott, to come back and pretty much start for them at running back. And to me, Dallas is a CeeDee Lamb injury away from being a pop gun offense. They have no other skill position players besides really Ferguson, the tight end. They have no running game whatsoever. It's going to be very Dak dependent. And I think the Commanders had one hell of a draft. I think a very underrated draft. They got some defensive pieces along with a couple of receivers, including the brother of Christian McCaffrey to go out and pair with Jaden Daniels. I think Washington can all of a sudden be a sneaky team. And if Dallas falls down a little bit, Washington comes up. I think the Cowboys' old DC, Dan Quinn, and the Commanders may be in line to take second place in my division, the NFC East.
If the Giants had drafted a quarterback, I would have said maybe they could jump up, but...
Well, listen, the Giants don't have any weapons, so even if they drafted a quarterback, it wouldn't have worked, and I don't want Malik Neighbors, as I said last week. So I'm happy what the Giants did. The Giants, as I will tell you, are now the new Cleveland Browns.
You know, I know we're talking about teams that had duds in terms of draft, which I would go with the Buffalo Bills on that one. You trade out twice in the first round. First of all, you traded with the Kansas City Chiefs. How did that work out the first time? Oh, I don't know. You allowed the Chiefs to get Patrick Mahomes and he's torched you. Then you trade out to the Chiefs again and you allow them to get the fastest wide receiver in the draft. Good luck with that. Then they trade out again to the Carolina Panthers who go get a wide receiver. I don't get what Buffalo did. But I want to give a one quick shout out to the Detroit Lions cuz
They rebuilt. They did what Philly did. I want their draft too. They rebuilt their secondary in one draft.
Yeah, and they screwed over the Packers again. It was hilarious. I think it's becoming a yearly draft tradition where the Lions trade up just to screw over the Packers because it happened this year with Arnold and um who was it that they traded up for last year? Oh,
Well,
it was the
there was Campbell, the outside linebacker, and then there was Gibbs.
no, it was Branch. It was
Oh, Deion Branch in the second round. Yeah,
yes. Yep, the Lions traded up because I
or
think the
Brian Branch, not
yes,
Deion. I was thinking of the receiver. I'm sorry.
yes, yeah. Brian Branch. I swear it's becoming a yearly draft tradition for the Lions to trade up in front of the Packers and go draft the guy the Packers wanted. Because I bet you the Packers wanted both Brian Branch and Arnold. So
Speaking of that division, the Lions we know are loaded. I think Chicago may be the most improved team in the league next year. I think they're absolutely loaded. And I think that team's going to be really good. I think Minnesota has some of the best offensive pieces, and I think J.J. McCarthy is going to fit really well in that scheme. And so for me, the question really is, we all loved Green Bay at the end of last year. But I am starting to think now, and we'll wait till the schedule comes out, whether it's this week or next week, and I go through it and make my official predictions. But there is a world out there, in my opinion, where we all got hyped about Green Bay at the end of last year. What are their projections? Because we see this in the NFL all the time. We always think teams are going to go up and up and up, and then they don't always do that. Green Bay could go from, hey, we got a real chance to knock off the Lions in this division to them being back in the basement with 9 wins, them being essentially the Steelers or the Bengals or the Browns from last year in the AFC North.
they're the NFC North is going to be the most interesting division in the NFL.
I think it's overtaken the AFC North as the best division in football from 1 to 4.
It definitely, you could definitely make an argument for that. I would still give the slight edge to the AFC North because I need to see Chicago take that next step. Um, and I want to see what Minnesota looks like with JJ McCarthy as quarterback for
That's
them.
fair. To be honest with you, I am projecting they both take big steps up, and I am projecting, unfortunately for us, that our hometown Browns take a little step back. No slight of their own. I just think their schedule in particular is very difficult. And we have to see where those games land. Their home schedule is a murderer's row. I mean, outside of the Saints and Giants, there's no easy game on there.
Well,
So,
yeah, but except the Saints game is in New Orleans, not
oh, it is. For some reason, I thought the Saints game was in Cleveland. Well, I'll
no,
tell you,
it's here in Cleveland, which I know we have to get to the quarterbacks, but I want to throw a little bonus topic in here before we get to that.
Spencer Rattler.
No, because we're talking about the schedule. Have you heard that Roger Goodell wants to make the schedule to go to 18
Well,
games?
not only have I heard that, it's happening. And I think this is a genius move by the NFL because the NFL is all about adapting and it's all about marketing. The NFL is going to start on Labor Day weekend, which used to be a problem until this thing called smartphones became invented and apps became invented, and people can watch games wherever they're at, on the go, at parties, wherever. The NFL is such a giant now that it overtops the NBA, MLB, NHL combined, basically. And so I love the fact that they're going to do Labor Day weekend, there's an opportunity there that you could have a Thursday game. You could have a Friday game if you wanted to, what they're doing in Brazil. You could have a Saturday night primetime game if you wanted to. They could really take over that whole weekend. Not only that, but you're going to add an extra bye week for every team, which I'm assuming would be around the same time, like mid season, which would put the Super Bowl on what's usually a holiday for most companies, though some companies like mine consider President's Day a floating holiday. And that's putting the Super Bowl on President's Day weekend, which everybody has wanted for years. And I also think there's a real chance that in the future, Super Bowl Sunday may even become Super Bowl Saturday if they feel they can get more eyeballs on the product that way. The NFL is all about getting more eyeballs on the product.
I don't think they should move the Super Bowl off of Sunday because that's Sunday is the day everybody expects NFL football, so it makes sense to do that.
I am wondering this, and I agree with you. So if they don't do that, my question is, because it would be on a holiday, President's Day weekend, do you move the start of the game back to actual prime time, 8 p.m. Eastern?
You could, but here's my thing, because you know me, I love analyzing schedules, looking at does this road trip make sense for this team, and you know when do the prime time games happen, and when are the rivalry games and all that. I've always loved schedule analysis. It's one of my favorite parts of sports media and all that. Um, I understand how the schedule gets made. You know, the divisions are on a rotation. Like this year, the Browns are playing the NFC East. Next year, they'll play the NFC North. I get all that. And this year, the Browns are playing the AFC West. I think next year it's the AFC East and then Southwest again. Whatever. But where would that other game come from? Because I know why we're playing the Saints. It's because we finished in the same spot as them, third place in our division, third place in their division. Where would that extra game come from?
So I'm going to answer it in two ways. The first way is I think they'll do the exact same way they chose the 17th game, but just pick another division. So
From the opposite conference?
yes. So like the Browns play the Saints because they're in the same spot. They already play the NFC East this year, so choose the North or West, and
They
that
would
would be
probably, in that example, they would probably go with the West because this season the Browns played the Bears from the NFC North because of that extra game. So
okay.
it, in that example, I think they would go with the NFC
And
West.
obviously, so the Browns, would every team would get 9 home and 9 away games. Um, the other answer I'm going to give you, and this is something that I have not heard a lot of talk about, is I think when the NFL goes to 18 games, they're not only going to expand the games, we know they're going to expand the roster. They're also going to expand the teams. I think the NFL is looking at a 34 team league potentially.
What two cities would you add in that scenario?
And I don't know because I don't think London is a smart idea, though I think Roger Goodell really wants it. I personally don't think it's a good idea. Maybe a team in Canada, I mean, the Buffalo region, they've had some games there. I think that could be a possibility. Um,
That is an interesting idea because Toronto has a team in the other three. Um,
yeah, maybe San Antonio as well. They have that huge Alamo Dome that they could use. Um,
what
so
about Louisville, Kentucky? Maybe.
it would work for the NFL, but because the market size don't matter. But will they be invested in football like they are? Because I think you got to go away from the big college towns, personally.
Okay. Then how? Okay. Then let me throw out one for you. Because Salt Lake City now has the NHL. They want to get Major League Baseball. They already have the NBA. Could they possibly get an NFL team?
I'd say it's possible, but you got to tell me they have a stadium that's already being built or is ready to go.
Okay. Um.
Because I don't know the answer to that one. I know Toronto has one. I know because, like I said, the Bills have played up there
Right.
occasionally, and
Right.
San Antonio I know has one. So that's why those two came off the top of my head.
Right.
let's quickly get to talking about the six quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round. We mentioned Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, as well as JJ McCarthy. Out of those six, Josh, who had the best chance of succeeding?
Ooh, I would probably go with JJ McCarthy based off of the offensive system and the head coach he has, plus playing in a dome. Although Caleb Williams could be playing in a dome in the future. The Bears did release renderings of a dome. I want to get into that, but we can do that on a future show. Um, but nonetheless, I would go with JJ McCarthy in Minnesota.
Quick follow up for you when it comes to the Bears. I'm just curious. Is that in the city of Chicago, or is that like what they're going to do in Cleveland? Is that a suburb?
From what I understand, it would be in the city.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
So I'm going to shock everybody here. Because I actually think, because we talked about this prior to the draft, right? That usually two quarterbacks are superstars, two of them are pretty average, and two of them are busts. I actually think, because this is a historic draft class, and I think most of these quarterbacks landed in really good spots for mostly all of them. I think only one of them is going to fail. And I think that one's going to be Drake May. I think Drake May is, and no fault. If Drake May went to Minnesota, I think Drake May would succeed. I think New England, they did the polar opposite of what Belichick would do. They drafted almost all offense, besides one pick was a safety, I believe. They drafted receivers, they drafted backs, they drafted some linemen. So New England added talent around Drake May. It's just not high end talent. Now they need to spend some money. They have a defensive coach. Again, Chicago has one, but Chicago's got legitimate receivers. Washington has one, but they have a superstar OC, I think, in Cliff Kingsbury, who I think is a better offensive coordinator than head coach. They also have Terry McLaurin. I think Denver and Minnesota, for those two quarterbacks, I said it, whoever was going to land there was going to work. And I think Michael Penix in Atlanta, again, I think he has the infrastructure, and the fact that he's played in a dome will help him. Drake May being in that division with right now two other defensive head coaches, plus the Miami Dolphins, who are always going to be very talented and very fast with Mike McDaniel, plus the
And
fact
we know how difficult it is to go down to Miami and win.
that, and you got to play outside in the cold, and you got to deal with the AFC. Caleb Williams is in the NFC. Jane Daniels is in the NFC. Michael Penix is in the NFC. JJ McCarthy is in the NFC. Now,
Spen-
Bo, now
even though he went later in the draft, Spencer Rattler,
Spencer
he's
Rattler is in the
he,
NFC.
exactly.
Now,
Which I think
Bo Nix
go ahead.
is in the AFC, but as
Yes.
we talked about, he's with Sean Payton. Denver
Right.
already won 7 to 8 games. Like, he's probably going to be pretty good. I think Drake May. Now, I don't think New England's going to be terrible. I think it's on the board. They can improve. You know, they may not be the worst team in the league, 5, 6 wins. Like, I don't. I feel bad for the kid that he's in this situation. I think he's going to be the one that probably busts, but we've seen it all the time. Could Drake May be that elevator that just takes the Patriots back to prominence? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible that that's not the case.
Yeah. For me, I questioning Jaden Daniels in Washington, not because of Jaden, just because of the current stadium situation with Washington. We know how crappy FedEx Field is, although I don't think FedEx is sponsoring that stadium anymore, so I have
I
no
don't
idea.
believe so either. I think it's just called Commander's Field or something.
Okay, either way, we know how bad the conditions are at that stadium. So that does have, and maybe I'm reading into that too much, but that has me a little concerned with Jaden Daniels. Plus, Washington's offensive line in the past, we saw Sam Howell had like no time to throw the ball. So, will Jaden Daniels have enough time to get the ball to Terry McLaurin and some of his other weapons?
So I think they made a big addition this offseason that nobody paid about at center. That was Tyler Biotish, who came over from Dallas. And I do think that some of those sacks were on Sam Howell. They weren't all on the offensive line.
And I'm not trying to blame only the offensive line, but it does have me questioning a little bit. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. And again, I think that Washington's a weird team where it's like it could be really good, it could be really bad, which more than likely means he's probably going to be okay. But I don't think he's going to bust flat out in Washington.
Right. No, I don't think so either. But if I had to choose a quarterback that has me like scratching my head in terms of like questions, it would be Jaden Daniels because of those things I mentioned.
Before we move on, I'm going to throw something so wild at you because you brought it up and tell me what you think about it.
Go ahead.
Week one, the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints is Spencer Rattler.
I was thinking that same thing.
I mean, the kid, and there's all this talk about, oh, this documentary, he messed up, yada, yada, yada. NFL teams couldn't get out of his head. I'm going to defend Spencer Rattler here because I didn't love him as a prospect. I thought, he was a third round pick. But when a dude is 15, they're not even halfway to grown up. I think he was 17 when the documentary came out, but we know kids make mistakes. I made dumb mistakes even in my 20s, and I'm 25, and I'm still making stupid mistakes to this day. And I think, he grew up and went to Oklahoma and was around Jalen Hurts. And I think that he could be the answer the Saints are waiting for because we know Derek Carr is not. But the problem with him is he is a defensive coach, and I think the Saints are a disaster and have no idea what they're doing. But again, Cincinnati was a disaster and didn't know what they were doing, and Joe Burrow saved the franchise. So you never know.
You're correct. Although who knows what Cincinnati's going to look like because T. Higgins has requested a trade and so has Trey Hendrickson.
I'll say this though, that Jermaine, and I know his last name starts with a B. I can't put my own name on it. The receiver they drafted out of Bama, he's a speedster. I think that that's their T. Higgins replacement, and I thought that was a hell of a pick by Cincinnati.
Okay, one more thing. Since you brought up receivers, I want to get to this super, super quick. What did you think? We know the questions surrounding the San Francisco 49ers when it comes to Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. What did the 49ers do with their first round pick? They go and draft a wide receiver. Did that make your eyebrow go up?
A little bit. I thought it meant Ayuk was probably getting dealt more than Deebo, which you know how I always feel about, oh, I'm a wide back, Deebo Samuel. I don't like the Niners or Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk. But I think you can never have enough weapons. And I think they may get traded a year or so down the line, but I think San Francisco will start this year by basically going all in and trying to win a Super Bowl with all of those weapons on their roster.
See, Dallas, that's how you go all in. What you did, that wasn't all in. I don't know.
What do you mean? We got CD Lamb and we got Dak. And we brought back my son, Zeke.
Yay! We're going to go 12-5 again and then get eliminated in the wild card round. Hooray!
Because you don't have a running game and your whole offensive line is basically going to be rookies and you're playing a first place schedule. So, I mean, do you go 10-7, 9-8? I mean, it's on the board right now.
Yeah, I could see. I kind of like what you're saying about Washington possibly jumping them.
Okay, so when we started these NBA playoff talk here, Josh, I'm going to say something. I thought of you on Tuesday night.
Really?
And the reason I thought of you is we had two, what I call marvelous NBA playoff games between the New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers, Game 5, when Tyrese Maxey made that incredible, basically 7-1 run, those 7 points, send that game into overtime when it looked like the Sixers season was over. Followed that up by Evan Mobley saving J.B. Bickerstaff's job in Cleveland pretty much with an incredible block that put the Cavs up 3-2 on Orlando. And the reason why I said I thought of you is because I sat back Tuesday night watching those two NBA playoff games. And I know how obsessed I like/love sports. You live and die for sports. And the reason why I thought of you is because I sat back Tuesday night after watching those two playoff games. And I thought, this time in 2020, there was no sports on. How did my partner at Championship Rings survive 2020? That was my, honestly, laying in bed off the adrenaline of not only those two games, but the Guardians game and the Astros game going to extra innings. The Guardians obviously lost that one, came back and won last night. After that adrenaline high of what was that sports night our own town hasn't had in like 6 years since the 2018 NBA Finals. I'm like, how did this man, how is he still living after what 2020 gave us?
I I don't know. Um, but I'll tell you what. I didn't get to see all of the 76ers Knicks game because I was working down at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse for Game 5 between the Magic and the Cavaliers. I was able to catch the tail end of it because my shift for the Cavs ends at halftime, start of the third quarter ish. That was absolutely amazing. And I said this earlier in a video I posted on YouTube. Uh, this series between the Knicks and 76ers has been fantastic. We've had close games, we've had controversies, we've had conversations about the fans, for God's sakes. We've had amazing performances. The only two things missing from this series are a suspension and an ejection. I mean,
Well, and we've had Joel Embiid falling and looking like Andre the Giant, and we've had Joel Embiid, playing dirty on some nights. So I'm gonna throw this at you because I said this today on Braden's World. It will be such a Sixers slash the city of Philadelphia thing to get absolutely murdered tonight. Because knowing the city of Philadelphia like I do in their sports, think about it. The Phillies, they get to the World Series, they lose. The next year, they obviously lose to the Arizona Diamondbacks in the NLCS after having a 3-2 week. The Philadelphia Eagles go to the Super Bowl, blow a lead to the Chiefs. The next year, they start out 10-1. They collapse like all hell and get beat to hell by Tampa in the wild card round. The Philadelphia 76ers, they have a great player in Joel Embiid who's never healthy, seems to always be hurt, and now they're down 3-2 in a series of the Knicks where they stole Game 5 and now will probably lose Game 6 because that's the way the city of Philadelphia sports have gone lately.
yes. And what's crazy is the Sixers are and the city of Philadelphia is doing everything they can to make sure this is a 76ers home game, and it doesn't sound like they're playing in Madison Square Garden. Because I'll tell you what, I watched Game 4. That was crazy. I'm
Yeah,
like,
that was basically a Knicks home game, which you would never expect out of a Philadelphia crowd. Though I will say it is a short, it's an hour train ride, basically from New York to Philadelphia. If you take Amtrak, which I cover over at my day job for Mass Transit Magazine,
yes,
but
I get that, but still, like Philadelphia, as you know, Philadelphia is one of the most passionate sports towns in this country. Like, if you don't live up to the hype or you don't meet Philadelphia's expectations, the city and the fans will let you know about it. Ask Ben Simmons about it.
that's
You can,
Carson Wentz.
uh, yeah, Carson Wentz. Um,
Both of those guys, obviously, one was drafted number one overall, one was drafted number two. Both were viewed as the savior of the city, and both crumbled under the pressure.
exactly. Allen Iverson, he met the pressure. Did,
Someone got into a finals, though never got him over the hump.
right, but still got him to a finals. That's pretty
Yeah, but for Philadelphia, I'm telling you, that's not good enough. It's why they don't view Donovan McNabb in the same light.
fair enough. But I I'm hoping this goes to a game 7. It feels like a series that should go to a game 7.
So I want to throw something at you because I've been thinking about this, and you may say, no, you're crazy, Josh. If the Sixers don't win this series, I think you have to have a grown up conversation, and I think you have to consider starting over and moving Embiid.
That's an interesting idea.
I think you have to have a grown up conversation and say, hey, listen, he may be, and I'm not saying he's the best player in the league. Obviously, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Victor Wembanyama, Luka, we know all the stars. What I'm saying is, I think he might be the most valuable player just in terms of their record when he's on and off the court. The problem is, he's never available. Not only that, but when he is available, he goes down one tumble, and like I said, he looks like Andre the Giant. And not only that, but there was a weird moment in game four. I don't know if you remember when he pump fakes and he had a wide open jumper, and then he goes to the lane and instead of dunking the ball, does a Ben Simmons esque layup that he misses. Awfully not clutch. The process has clearly not worked, and you have to have a grown up conversation here and say, we're not better than Boston. We're not better than the Knicks. Milwaukee is not going to be this hurt again, and we're probably not better than Milwaukee. Where are we
You're not
going?
better than Indiana.
Well, I think that they are technically better than Indiana. I think if Embiid was healthy all year, but again, that's the problem. Where are you going? You're going nowhere. You are a second round cap, and that's it. And you're not going to get a third star. And I don't think Tyrese Maxey can be that number one, but I don't think you can trust Embiid to be your number one either.
So I'm not totally on board with your idea, but I'm not totally against it either. I'm somewhere in the middle with it. But here's the thing, we've seen that Philly seems to play better with Tyrese Maxey as the primary focus. I mean, look at what happened when Jalen Brunson got to New York. The Knicks have become, what they are now.
Yeah, but Philly has not won at the level they did when Embiid has not been there. I mean, they would be a 3 or 4 seed if Embiid was healthy for the whole year.
You're probably right there.
They were
But
32-8 with Embiid on the court this year. They were Spurs territory without him.
again, I'm not totally disagreeing with what you're saying. But maybe what you could do is, instead of having Embiid be your primary guy, you can keep him on the roster, but slowly start to build around Tyrese Maxey
I
instead.
don't know if you can build around Maxi being your number one. I think you have to go out
Isn't that
and
what New York did with Jalen Brunson, though?
but Jalen Brunson has that dog in him. Jalen Brunson is that guy. I don't see it in Tyrese Maxey, or we would have seen it throughout this season.
This this playoff series against the Knicks hasn't shown you that he has a dog in him?
No, I think he made two clutch shots at the end, which I like, but not throughout the entire series. No, I don't think he's had a great series overall. I think he made two very good shots.
Interesting. Um, I got a little bit of a bitch, or not bitch, not
You got a little bit of a bitch.
that's not the right term. Um, complaint with this whole series. Why is the NBA still releasing these stupid 2-minute reports? It is
Don't get it. Don't care about it. I don't care. Referees mess up all the time. Play through it. I'm tired of players complaining about referees not making calls. I just am. I'm tired of it. You are grown men. And you know what? The NBA stopped making calls in mid March for this exact reason. There are fouls every single game. But you know what? The good teams, I know we'll get to this game last, but people in Cleveland are even bitching about the officiating side and Orlando getting all these other free throws. You want to know why Orlando gets all the free throws? You want to know why the Knicks are getting way more free throws? Because they're putting their head down, they're driving like football players, and they are tagging the rim, and they are forcing the officials to make a call. Where the teams like the Sixers and the Cavs are running away like scaredy cats because they get the call. In the postseason, you earn the calls.
so that's not where I was going with it. The NBA released the final 2-minute report, and they said Tyrese Maxey's late 3-pointer, in which he got fouled by Mitchell Robinson.
Was it travel?
Exactly, and I'm
which
like,
well, you can see it on the slowdown video that it was, but I'm going to defend the referee. They are looking at the defender. I didn't notice it in real time either.
exactly. No, that's my exact point, though, is by saying, oh, yeah, he traveled. You're not helping your cause, NBA. Now, instead of, us being all crazy about tonight's game, which I'm very excited about game 6 between the Knicks and 76ers. You clearly aren't quite as excited about it, which I understand.
I'm excited about it, but I don't know. I can't trust the Sixers. It's very hard for me to get into the game when I know the Sixers. I'm preparing for a meltdown.
But my point though is when you on, give out that 2 minute report and say, oh, yeah, there was this missed call, guess what? Now fans are going to start saying, oh, why didn't you call this? Why did you call that? And it's like, you know, the
It would be like if Major League Baseball went out and after every game publicized every single error that an umpire made in the strike or ball zone. I mean,
you know what else it would be like? It would be like if somebody misspoke on in the final Jeopardy and they said, nope, you don't win. And then Jeopardy comes out the next day and says, actually, no, we're going you should have been
yeah.
given that correct answer. It's that type of thing. You're opening a can of worms that you don't need to open.
And
That's my
by the way, the NFL does it, but they do it right. They do it privately. As I've explained on this show many times, NFL officials are graded weekly on calls they get right, calls they get wrong, but they do it in complete privacy. Nobody knows about it.
right. Like we'll talk about why did they make that call and they should have why was this play re- reviewed and changed or whatever. But it's not like the NFL, as you said, publicly says, yeah, this call should have been made or that call should not have been made. That's more of what I was going for.
Okay, so I want to go to the next game on our list. That being that the Milwaukee Bucks, with just Chris Middleton, somehow survived and got this to a game 6 against Indiana. Now, I did not think it was possible. I actually thought Indiana was going to blow Milwaukee out. I thought Milwaukee was just going to be mentally defeated without Giannis, without Dame. But I'll say this: you said earlier that you thought Indiana was better than Philly. I can make the argument this series should be flipped because I thought Milwaukee should have won game 3 if they just rebounded the ball. I thought they outplayed Indiana in game 3 in Indiana. I have not been impressed by Indiana in this series, who have not been able to take advantage of the fact that Milwaukee's best 2 players are out. And Milwaukee has no chemistry either, and their defense is horrible. Yet Indiana better win tonight. Because if you get to a game 7 in Milwaukee, it's no holds barred.
By the way, that game is underway. I'll give you a score update right now.
Okay, we got a live score update here. If Milwaukee gets off to a good start, Indiana's in trouble.
It's right now it is 23-19 in favor of the Pacers.
Okay, so sounds like the Pacers are playing well in the first quarter. They have to win tonight.
Damian Lillard, by the way, is playing for the
Wait,
Bucks.
Lillard is playing. Okay, that's interesting. Giannis is not playing though.
No.
Okay, so it does change the equation a little bit. Obviously, Milwaukee has a puncher's chance, but Indiana's got to win this series. If you can't win a series where Giannis either would play in a game 7 or doesn't play at all, you didn't even deserve to be in the playoffs, from my point of view.
I think even though they have Dame back tonight, I think Indiana closes this out. And if we get Indiana, New York in round 2, I think that would be a fascinating series. Because
I disagree. I think the Knicks would gentlemen sweep them. I don't think Indiana's that talented. I think Indiana's offensively talented. They don't have the defense, and I think the Knicks would clamp them and suffocate them.
I, I have you Indiana. I think they've only gone 2 games where they didn't score 100 points. They will get out and run every opportunity. So
They will, but the playoffs are magnified when you can make adjustments, and the best coaches are in the playoffs, and New York would have the best player in that series.
okay, but then Indiana would have the next 3 best players in Siakam, Turner, and Halliburton.
Well, but Halliburton has not played at that All-Star level ever since the All-Star break. Even in this series, he's been okay. He's not been great. Siakam gave him a big lift in game 2. He's been decent. Turner, I think, has been the most consistent out of all 3 of them.
If Indiana does get to the Eastern Conference Finals, which was my big hot take, and they play Boston, The Celtics better have Kristaps Porzingis for that series, or the
Yeah.
Pacers could give them serious problems.
You know what's funny? Don't feel offended by this, but I feel like you are bandwagoning on the Pacers like I was on the Miami Heat last year. You are in love with the Pacers the way I was in love with the Heat. Let's see if that Pacer bandwagon can ride you all the way to the finals.
Hey, I did it with I picked the Bengals to go to the Super Bowl the year they did it. They ended up going to the Super Bowl against the Rams, and everybody thought I was crazy. And then what happened? The Bengals were in the Super Bowl, and I'm like, I called it. Thank you very much.
There you go. So this next series, um, I said it at the start. We both said this is going to be a very good series. I had said the winner of this series depends on the health of one number two for the Los Angeles Clippers. And the ironic thing is, the two games they won, as you pointed to me on the platform now known as X, formerly known as Twitter, that they have won their first two games in the series. They did win to tie it up at two without Kawhi Leonard on the floor. That was in part from a turn the clock back magical game four from James Harden and Paul George. But I think the Clippers gave everything they could in Dallas in that game. And I think the fact that Dallas came back from a 31-point deficit shows that Dallas was not afraid of the Clippers at any point in the world. And I think they proved it last night in game five. And I don't think the Clippers can bounce back and win it in six. But again, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think I told you from the start. This is other than Magic Cavaliers, because the Cavs are my hometown team and they're my number one team in all of sports. But this was the series I was most excited for, um, because the Clippers and Mavericks have played each other now 3 times since 2020, and the first two series went 6 games and 7 games. So I'm like, what's the third time gonna bring us? And it's been a fascinating series. I mean, the fact that, like you said, the Clippers were able to win 2 games without Kawhi. Granted, the Mavericks came back from 31 points, and it basically took a Paul George miracle 3-pointer to seal it for the Clippers because Luka and Kyrie were on one that game. And then, what was that performance by the Clippers last night?
Well, that was a classic Clipper game because you can't trust James Harden in the playoffs or Paul George or Russell Westbrook, who, by the way, ever since game one has gone 4 for 38 in the series. But people think he's a Hall of Famer. I think the Basketball Hall of Fame needs to get their facts checked on that. Um, I also think that James Harden, I don't know if you know this, James Harden has the most career games in NBA playoff history where he's taken 10 shots and made two or three or less, both of them.
I don't. uh, We've we've heard so much about James Harden. He's a great player. He should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't view him as a great player. I don't think he's even close to a Hall of Famer. I think James Harden is a very good player, but not a great player.
In
No.
his prime for those years in Houston, I think he was the best offensive scorer maybe in the history of the game. Offensive score was the key, not overall player, just offensive score, specifically in that Mike D'Antoni offense.
I mean, yeah, but then what happened in the series against San Antonio?
And that's what I always said. James Harden, he always disappears oddly. Remember last year in Philadelphia? Disappeared in game six and game seven. And then, as I proudly said on the first or second episode of Championship Rings, he decides to eat Oreos and get his way out of Philly.
Yes. For me, he's not a Hall of Famer. In my opinion, James Harden is not a great player. He's a very good player at best.
So I'm going to throw the same question to you about the Clippers that I threw to you about the Sixers. If you lose this series, if I'm a team like Cleveland or any other team that's close, like in Orlando, that needs a wing, I'm calling the Clippers. I'm asking for Kawhi Leonard. I think
Oh,
it's
I thought you were going to say Paul George.
that too, but I think the Clippers were more than likely trade Kawhi. It's time. You can't rely on him in the postseason. It is time.
See, that's part of the reason why if I'm a team like the Cavaliers or Orlando, I don't know if I want Kawhi.
But can I make the argument for those teams? You probably would have to give up draft picks and maybe some bench players, but I can literally load manage him for half the season. I'd play him at, you know, 20 home games and 15 away games. I maybe play him less than half the year. I would basically have him ready for a playoff run.
It's certainly an idea, but if the Clippers lose this series, which I think they're going to, this whole era has been, or run, whatever you want to call it, has been a complete and total failure. I mean, and what's Steve Ballmer supposed to do? You're building this, or you built this shiny new arena that you're moving into next season. You want everybody to be excited about it, but if you lose in the first round, what's there to be excited about? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. I want to move on to that guy, Jamal Bleeping Murray, who for 2 out of the 5 games of this series, and I will say this, and I don't say this lightly, the closest 5 game series I have ever watched in my 25 years on Earth. I really felt like the Lakers are as good as any team in the West outside of the Denver Nuggets. And I think they drew the wrong matchup, and Darvin Ham's going to get fired for it. And LeBron, who knows what's going to happen with him? And the Lakers are going to torture themselves, just like the Houston Rockets did over not being able to beat Golden State. Guess what? Same thing here. The Lakers cannot beat Denver, and they tried, and they led for 70% of the
Yeah,
series. And
exactly.
I mean, you people watching could not tell me that the Lakers they're clearly not better than Denver. But you can't sit there and go, "Oh, Denver owned the Lakers. The Lakers had no chance." The Lakers could have very easily been up 3-1 in that series, at least going into Game 5.
You could say the same thing going back to the Western Conference Finals last year.
Again, all I've never seen every single game went the exact same way for like the first 6 or 7 games, if you include the Western Conference Finals plus this year's first round. The Lakers would get out to a first quarter lead, second quarter, Denver would chip away, then the third quarter would come. And the Lakers would either get nothing from the combination of D'Angelo Russell, Rory Hachimura.
Okay, let me stop you right there. I want to talk about D'Angelo Russell for a minute. What was that dude doing at the end of the bench on his damn phone?
Well, if you want me to be funny, I could say he was placing an illegal bet because he's an NBA player on the Denver Nuggets to win the championship. But I don't know. He was booking his Cancun flight, as many people have said. I mean, the Lakers. And here's the other thing: they have to have a real conversation now because yes, you want LeBron back, but are you going to go through the same pain again of bringing back LeBron and AD? Like, if you're going to do that, which I think they will, and I think LeBron wants to stay in LA, to me, you get a backup big for AD, but then you just draft and go out and sign all free agent shooters. They don't have to be guards, they can be wings, whoever. Guys like, back in the day, like what LeBron had, like a Mike Miller, a Ray Allen, a Kyle
Mario
Korver, a
Chalmers.
J.R. Smith. Guys that can just, James Jones, guys that can just hit shots. LeBron is 39 years old. He may not be able to do it every single night anymore, but I could argue LeBron's best position is being the point guard next year of the Los Angeles Lakers and going downhill at the basket. And you surround him with AD and 3 other shooters like that are knockdown shooters because that's what they need. Austin Reeves is a nice player. I would not do what they are rumored to do and go get Trae Young because I think on the defensive end he would just get exposed. And I think you would have to give up Austin Reeves and other pieces. I wouldn't be willing to do it for that. I just think move on from Jared Vanderbilt. Move on from D'Angelo Russell. Gabe Vincent clearly didn't provide you jack squat. And yet you still should have beat Denver. But yet Jamal Murray is that guy. Nikola Jokic can have a bad game and still gets 22 rebounds, by the way. Let's put that into perspective.
It's so hilarious with Nikola Jokic. You look at him and he's like, and the dude can't jump up on a crate, and yet you still cannot stop him.
And by the way, for the record, I'm just going to point this out. Michael Porter's family, half of them's getting arrested for DUIs, half of them's getting kicked out of the NBA, and this dude hasn't missed a shot in the damn series.
And don't forget about Aaron Gordon
What
either.
about Aaron Gordon? And KCP too. Every time you look up, you need a shot. Bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, it sets up a very interesting matchup between them and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Before we get to the Minnesota side of it, can we talk about the Phoenix side real quickly?
Well, let
Because
me just let
go
me
ahead.
just let me just say this with the Lakers. You're probably right that Darvin Ham is going to lose his job. I don't think he should. The- Too
I
many too many times we uh, when a team doesn't meet expectations, we automatically place the blame on the coaches. And I could tie Frank Vogel into this conversation as
I
well.
thought Frank Vogel was a better coach than Darvin Ham. I don't think Darvin knows how to manage rotations. I think Vogel actually did a decent job. He was just the victim of a bad Lakers roster.
There's reports that Frank Vogel might get fired. I don't think he should get fired. I don't think Darvin Ham should get fired. You are right that like three of the guys the Lakers brought off the bench were guards. But part of that is also, as you said, the Lakers don't really have a backup big. I mean, Jackson Hayes is nice, but what's
He
he
didn't
gonna?
do anything in this series. Zero.
That's no, that's exactly my point though. But that's not Darvin Ham's fault.
Well, I think Darvin Ham's like JB Bickerstaff. He's except he doesn't scream. You know,
So I don't think Darvin Ham should lose his job with the Lakers, but unfortunately, I think he's going to.
so I think Phoenix was set up to fail because Bradley Beal and Devin Booker are the same player. I said it when they made the trade. Now I had said that as much as Chris Paul was declining, I personally would have not gotten rid of Chris Paul because
Same.
I don't think Devin Booker is that guy. I think we often confuse talented players with that guy mentality. Jamal Murray's never made an all star team. I'll take him over half the damn league and more. I think Jamal Murray's a top 10, maybe even top 5 or 6 clutch player in the NBA, and that's what I want in the postseason. I don't want a guy that puts up, oh, look at Devin Booker tonight, guys. He put up 70 points. Yeah, and you lost. I don't give a damn. Devin Booker's very talented. He's a scorer. That's all he is. He's not a leader. Chris Paul was the leader of that Suns team. And Kevin Durant, by the way, is not a leader. And Kevin Durant has hurt his legacy ever since he decided to leave the dynasty and go to some cuckoo town called Brooklyn, New York, with 2 cuckoos that even the guy that quit, James Harden, he was smart enough to say, give me, excuse my language, because I think it's emphasis here for needing it, give me the fuck out of there. Because that place was a disaster. And Durant, if I'm him, I'm looking around at Phoenix going, this roster stinks. Get me the F out of here.
For me, Kevin Durant's legacy was tarnished the minute he decided to leave Oklahoma City and go to Golden State.
But
So
so clearly, Golden State. I mean, they didn't need Durant. He was the ultimate enforcer. They needed him to beat the Cavs. They didn't need him to win another championship.
exactly.
Did
So
you did you know Kevin Durant has played 8 total minutes past the first round, or excuse me, past the second round ever since that series in Brooklyn against Milwaukee after that game 7?
that's crazy.
That's it. Eight
Yeah.
total minutes in the second round.
Um.
By the way, he hasn't made it back to a conference final since the Golden State won in 2019 when obviously he was hurting.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the first time since 2005 that the second round of the playoffs will not include Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, or LeBron James. And I'm all here for it because now that gives opportunities to guys like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who I think should win MVP this season, not Nikola Jokic. That's no disrespect to Jokic. But if Shea was not with the Thunder, they wouldn't be anywhere near the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. So I get it. If Jokic wasn't with Denver, would they be as good as they are? No, but I still think they would be a decent team. So that's major difference.
Yeah,
Um, but
I
that,
I kind of wish right now. I never say this to my wife. I kind of wish right now I wagered more than I did on Denver winning the championship. Because I seriously don't think, and Minnesota's a good team. They will give Denver a series. I think Anthony Edwards has real potential to be a future NBA superstar. And you know me, I use that word very deep. To be a superstar, you got to be a real number one to me. I have no problem kicking guys out of that superstar category. Um,
I can, we all put John Morant in that category for
was
a
we
while.
all thought he was, and then John Morant decided to go play with guns. And John Morant is pretty much now non-existent because of the depth and talent that's in the NBA in today's game.
Yeah, for me, he he's not going to get back to that level. I just wanted to mention that since you were talking about the term
By the way,
superstar.
people forget. Do you remember they were the 2 seed last year?
Yep, and lost to the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. But should we get to the game that's near and dear to our heart? That the and by the way, who said after game one when everybody was texting me, "Oh, Brandon, you're just a hater. The Cavs won. Be happy." I said, ladies and gentlemen, this series is going 7 games because the Cavs don't have a coach. And that is the difference. And by the way, did I not say before the playoffs? I remember telling you right on championship rings. JB Bickerstaff has officially topped Hugh Jackson and Freddie Kitchens as the worst coach in the history of Cleveland sports.
Yep, you did say that.
Guy has no idea what he's doing. This game should have been over about 6 different times. And by the way, the more you let Orlando get into this series, the more comfortable they're getting. Orlando didn't play that well in game 5. And Donovan Mitchell, by the way, I am starting to really question if he is that guy because I don't think Donovan Mitchell has had a good series either. He had a horrible game 5 when he should have taken control and demanded and won that game essentially by himself. That's what a real superstar would do. But instead, Darius Garland had to save the team in the first quarter with 17 points. And yet the Cavs, they were up, what was it, 15? Damn near almost 20. And you look up at my halftime, it's a 1-point game. And we can't rebound to save our lives. And I don't care if Jared Allen's not in the game or not. Jonathan Isaac is dominating you on the board. Pavel Banchero is owning you on the boards. Wendell Carter is destroying you on the boards.
Yeah, I think this series is going back to Cleveland for a game 7. I'm with you on this because we got absolutely destroyed down in Orlando in game 3 and game 4.
And then, by the way, the Cavs were up 9. How do you go? Well, let me ask you this question. I don't even think the Pistons could do this. You go from the start of the third quarter to halfway through the fourth quarter. That's 18 total minutes in NBA time. The Cavs scored a total of 12 points.
Yeah, I don't get it. I'm not sure.
They first of all, there's a lot of problems with this team. Number one is I don't care if Garland had a good first quarter. To me, he disappeared until a little bit later in the fourth. They are still way too Donovan Mitchell dependent. If Donovan Mitchell does not have a good game, the team looks lost. There's no leadership out there. Evan Mobley, yes, he had a great block, but he really did not play well, especially in game 3 and game 4. He's getting owned still down there. That should not happen.
Yeah, I have to admit it. Jamal Mosley is coaching.
He's running circles around JB.
It's like you knew what I was going to say because I was going to say the same damn thing.
By the way, when you look at this series shouldn't even be close. The Cavs are clearly more talented. And if Max Strus didn't have a Steph Curry-like quarter, the Cavs are going down 3-2 right now. Let's just put it the way it is.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
There's no way. But I told you after game 2, everyone was so happy we killed the Magic in game 2. I said we should have won by 30.
Yeah.
How did that game get caught? That was did I not come on here? We did the show the next day after game 2. And I came on here and I specifically said, you let the Magic back in the series by not closing the door. The Magic closed the Cavs' door in Game 3 and Game 4. It was over by halftime.
It really was. Well, no, Orlando basically
Game
just took.
3 it was. Game 4, by the end of the third quarter was over because Orlando put up 45 in the third
Yeah.
quarter.
Um, Paolo Banchero has exploded in this series.
Who's been the best player of the series? Let me ask you. It's been Pablo Banchero. It should be Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. And you know who else has been a great player in this series? Franz Wagner.
Prince Wagner looks better than half our guys.
Yeah.
But Isaac Okoro made a couple threes, but then he bricked a couple again in Game 5, which he has to hit his open threes. Evan Mobley has to hit his threes. And Jared Allen, I'm going to say this, and Jared Allen, hopefully he plays in Game 6, but I'm sorry. If he had that bad of a rib injury, I hope it's broken ribs. Because if it's just sore ribs or not taped up, then I'm sorry. I don't want you on my basketball team. This is a do or die Game 5, basically your season, because we know the winner of Game 5 wins over 80% of the time in a 2-2 split in the series. You had to win that game.
Yeah. It was interesting that Marcus Morris came off the bench and played like what?
Yeah. And by the way, Marcus Morris pretty much saved the game because, again, George Niang, who JB's got some sort of love fest with, decided to sit him because JB knows his job's on the line. And Tristan Thompson finally got some minutes. Thank God. He should have gotten some minutes in Game 1 and give Allen and Mobley some more rest, in my opinion. I still don't get why Sam Merrill's out there. Sam Merrill was a good regular season player, but he just looks lost out there in the postseason.
And the Magic are completely exposing him. I have to disagree with you about George Niang. I really like him. I think he's been a very good.
He hasn't done nothing in the series. He literally did nothing in the series at all.
Okay, you have me there. I'll give you that. But I liked what he did in the regular season.
And Karis LeVert, I've always said he drives me nuts. He doesn't pass. Watch him. Here's a guy who cares. Oh, give me the ball back. I'm moving my desk here because I'm getting so freaking pumped. Give me the ball back, bro, so I can shoot it and then brick it 75% of the time.
Isaac Okoro is the one that frustrates me the most, though.
The whole team frustrates me. I tell you? I know I texted many people this, including friend of the show, Jalen Sandvik, way back in about November. I said, in order to watch the Cavs before the game, I have to take ibuprofen.
Yeah, you're not wrong in that regard. But with Isaac Okoro, dude, you were a lottery pick.
Not only that, top 5. Not just the lottery, top 5.
And, okay, for a while, for a few years, you were the starting small forward. If you are a lottery pick and you're the starting small forward, I expect you to get me at least 10 points. You're going against the likes of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Giannis, Chris Middleton, and a number of other very good to great small forwards, not just in the Eastern Conference, but across the rest of the NBA. Dude can barely get 10 points a game.
Well, and as I mentioned, I completely lost my train of thought there.
You're welcome.
But as I mentioned, when it comes to this team, they have no dog in them. They have no fight in them. Donovan Mitchell, to me, has not played like the superstar he should in this series.
This series has been more of a pillow fight.
This is what I wanted to mention. Okay, here we go. People complaining about the officiating, that Orlando's getting all the calls and they're getting into the free throw line and the Roach are missing every call.
It's because they're being aggressive and
Thank you. It's because they are driving their head down like football players with a helmet on and driving to the basket and being more physical. They are holding the Cavs. If you watch closely when the Cavs set their picks, Orlando does have them by the jersey about half the time. They are holding, they are scratching, they are grabbing. But you know what the Cavs are doing? They're not embracing the physicality. They are running away from it and playing finesse basketball. And there's times where Strus will just come down and he'll pull up from 35 feet, and the one he made, which was incredible. But there was a couple of them where I'm like, man, even if he makes it, that's a bad shot. What are you doing?
Right. You're not Steph Curry. You're not Klay Thompson.
But my biggest takeaway from this series is whoever plays Boston is going to get murdered.
Even without Kristaps
Even
Porzingis.
without, because Boston, whatever. If the Cavs were playing Boston right now, they would have been swept already.
Which for me that's frustrating to hear, and you're in reality you're right, because based on what I've seen between the Cavs and the Celtics over the last 2 seasons, I'm like, I really want to see this in a playoff series. And then I watch how the two teams play. I'm like, oh my God,
Here's
Boston would murder us. And
the
I'm
the
like,
last the last stat for you that I'll give, and then we'll wrap up tonight's show. I heard this stat today, and I had to double check it, and I was taking it back because I couldn't believe it. So our coach, the worst head coach in the history of the NBA, JB Bickerstaff. We know he's had stints in Houston and Memphis as a head coach before. Do you know JB Bickerstaff has never in his head coaching career won a road playoff game?
really?
JB Bickerstaff has never, as a head coach, won a road playoff game.
Huh. By the way, it is now 47-38 Indiana with
So,
4:56 to
so
go in the
Indiana's
second.
playing well tonight. They should wrap it up. But speaking of wrapping it up, we gotta wrap it up tonight. I am actually sweating from talking about the. Oh my god, the Cavs. Anyway, ladies, that'll do it for this episode of Championship Rings. We will be back next week, maybe on Tuesday, maybe on Thursday, maybe on Wednesday. We'll see how the Cavs schedule shakes out if they can get past it. If they go to Game 7, I promise you it will go down to the wire, and it may come down to coaching, and the Cavs may lose Game 7 at home. Let's hope not. But with
Yes,
that
because I want to continue working Cavs games.
But with that being said, thank you everyone for tuning in. Brandon Lewis from Brandsville, Josh Ungar from the Younger to the Next YouTube channel. I'm trying to get my thoughts straight here. What an incredible episode of Championship Rings tonight. We'll be back next week, maybe breaking down the NFL schedule if it comes out. We're for sure talking about the NBA playoffs. Will the Cavs be alive? Will the Sixers somehow come back down 3-1? The semifinals will be underway. Cannot wait.
Yes, and also WNBA schedule or season is about to start, and Caitlin Clark makes her debut on the road against the Connecticut Sun.
The woman who has sold more jerseys than the entire Dallas Cowboys football team. How do you like that?
And they say the Dallas Cowboys are America's team. They haven't done anything since the 90s. Hooray!
Caitlin Clark, everybody's new American woman. She's more popular than Taylor Swift. Maybe not, but you get my gist.
What an ending.
And with that being said, that'll do it for tonight's episode of Championship Rings. Brandon Lewis, Josh Ungar. We'll see you next week. Peace.